we welcome on Geoff Duncan, current Lieutenant Governor of Georgia and a pretty fantastic baseball player. So, Geoff, you played college ball at Georgia Tech, were drafted by the Marlins back in 1996, and had a pretty successful half decade in the minor leagues. So I have to start. When did the idea of politics jump into your head after reaching AAA?
So interesting. I'll start with the first part. A fantastic baseball career, 69th round draft pick. They don't even have 69 rounds anymore. And I barely made every minor league team I ever played on. But thank you so much for making it sound like
I saw your ERA. You were in the twos in some seasons.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was a AA wonder, man. I figured it out. Yeah, politics, not one day of my life in the minor leagues did I ever think about being in politics. It just never crossed my mind. And it really, what kind of drew me in was, baseball was over, got married, had kids, started a business. I really just started paying attention to a lot of the issues that were out there. And fortunately for me, I was lucky. One of those guys had great coaches along the way, but they were more than coaches. They were leaders. And I just gravitated towards good leaders that just made sense, right? And I think we all have that gravitational pull, whether it's in the business world or the sports world, of good leaders. And I just felt like there was a vacuum of leadership inside of politics. That was really why I threw my name in the hat to start with 10 years ago.
That makes a ton of sense to me. And don't downplay your professional baseball career, because you know what? You say you barely made these teams. All you have to say is you were on these teams. You were a AAA baseball player.
Well, and one of y'all, I was looking at some of the bio stuff. One of y'all do play-by-play or call the games in Fort Wayne.
Yep.
That's my man over here.
Were you a tin cap at any point?
I was a Kane County Cougar.
Yeah.
And we played the Fort Wayne Wizards. So they must have upgraded names and stadiums and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a million miles of bus travel in the Midwest League.
Man, how about that? Yeah, now High A Central, they've got a bunch of boring names now.
Yeah,
but the Kane County Cougars, unfortunately, indie ball now, but they were great.
I saw that. It was, we used to say as jokingly at Kane County Cougars games that in between innings we played baseball there because it was all about the fan experience. Like every night there was some famous, the dog, Marvin Noodleman. I don't know even if he's still a thing.
Yeah, Myron Noodleman.
Wow, the crowd.
Man, Myron Noodleman, that's a good throwback. Hey, let's get a glimpse into your baseball background. We know you played at Tech. We know you were a successful minor leaguer. When did you first fall in love with baseball? Or what was your first major baseball memory?
Yeah, so for me, we lived in 7 states growing up. So every 2 years, we kind of did the shuffle thing and moved around. And I realized early on in life that if I was the best baseball player, or if I was a quarterback too in the football team, but if I was the best athlete when I showed up at a school, I'd automatically have friends. And so I just really worked hard to kind of be the best of the best. And it really was a great pathway. I get back to Georgia my senior in high school. So we literally did a lap around the country, got here my senior in high school, met my wife first day. And the whole baseball thing started to become a reality, right? I realized I could throw harder than everybody else. I was probably upper 80s, low 90s kind of guy. And more scouts started showing up, and it just made sense to go off to college. And fortunately for me, in our backyard was Georgia Tech, #1 team in the country at the time. Nomar Garcia-Parra was my shortstop.
Loaded.
Jason Varitek was my catcher. Jay Payton, which Sleepy here, was probably the best player on the team that year, sandwiched first-round pick by the Mets. So we had a great team. Inter squads were the most brutal experience of your life if you were a pitcher.
You had to go up against Nomar and Jason Varitek.
Yeah, it was impossible, right? I mean, you'd be a nervous wreck all day in class, knowing that you were going to face these guys. And the way we did it was we had teams of 5, offensive teams made out of 5, and Danny Hall put all those guys on the same team. It was like murderer's row. I needed an L screen to throw inter squads just to save myself.
That sounds about right. I had no idea that you were a quarterback. So quarterback, I understand you went to Georgia Tech, but you also say that you love these leaders, right? And you've been impacted by leaders. I do want to ask you a college football question now that just popped into my mind. I mean, the job that Kirby Smart's doing at Georgia, can you appreciate it as the lieutenant governor of Georgia, or are you just really mad at him as a Tech alum?
So Tech alum for sure, but my oldest son goes to school at the University of Georgia.
Okay.
So we're bipartisan in the House. And what a great season, man. I'm telling you what, we're actually going to the SEC championship game on Saturday. Our family is. What an incredible team and season they're putting on. And Kirby's done a great job of leading that team through some tough games. They'll definitely have a tough game with Alabama, but proud of them any which way. Tech's had a tough season. We're kind of in a rebuilding stage now and not certain how that all comes together, but I know we got a lot of good fans and good folks supporting them. So.
So you saw some studs at Georgia Tech in your inter-squad games, Nomar Veritek. Who's the best player you came across throughout your minor league career?
So I tell this great story in the book. I say it's a great story because it was shaping one. I got John Olerud to pop up on a 3-2 changeup in spring training. I literally came in my first big league spring training game. I gave up a hit the first guy, hit the second guy, and I walked the third guy. Bases loaded, no outs. It's just like 1999 when John Olerud was like the man. And I get him 3-2, and Jorge Fabregas comes out to the mound, and he's like, "Look, can you throw a 3-2 changeup?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why? It's like my third best pitch." He's like, "Because if you throw him the other two, he's gonna take your head off." And I threw him a 3-2 changeup, and he literally missed it by a millimeter. Pops it up the shortstop. Next guy, ground ball, double play, out of the inning.
My kind of claim to fame in high school baseball was I got to sit on the bench and watch Jack Flaherty, so not nearly as cool as you. But just staying on the minor league conversation, some awesome news came out of the minor leagues a week or so ago stating that MLB teams are finally required to provide housing for all of their minor league players. I'm really curious to hear about the living conditions in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it was so wild thinking back. I mean, I think my first paycheck, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I'm 46, and I played until I was late 20s. So 1996, I was in Utica, New York. My first paycheck was $750 a month. I signed for $1,000, and my first paycheck was $750 a month before taxes. And we lived at, I think it was the Utica College dorms, and they did an auto payroll deduction. So you literally would finish the month, like you get your paycheck, and I don't know, it was like $150 to live a month on. I don't think, and even at my highest peak moment, because I never went through minor league free agency or anything like that, I wasn't on the 40 man. I think at the most I made $2,500 a month in AAA, maybe. I think that sounds about right. Married, wanted to have kids. And it was difficult, man. It was, nobody really understands. I used to go to the mall in Portland, Maine, which, by the way, was one of the best minor league teams to play on, the Portland Sea Dogs. They gave us opportunities to sign up in the locker room to go sign autographs at the mall, and you'd get like $100 of store credit or something. And I would do it every chance I had.
Of course, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I was married. Like I needed to have, go out to dinner money.
And how crucial do you think it is to take care of these minor leaguers? I mean, it seems like such an obvious question, but we just haven't seen anything major done until now.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Everybody there is so happy to be there, and so excited to have an opportunity to play in the big leagues. And you're literally one phone call away. Once you get to AA, you're literally one phone call away from being a millionaire. And so you're just willing to do. I'm sure other industries are like that. Actors, artists, things of that nature. You just know you just need that one break. But along the way, I mean, gosh, the living conditions were tough. I was grateful. The Marlins took great care of us. They always were, nobody seemed to go without. Players would come together, big leaguers would come down on rehab and help out. So it's just a banded together family, but it's tough and certainly gets in the way of maybe sometimes making good decisions, maybe sometimes gets in the way of how long your career can stay alive because maybe you have, a wife and kids back home. I'm glad to see some traction to kind of creating a stable environment.
Yeah, I just feel like if you take care of your minor leaguers, it's just going to help your major league team. I mean, get these kids fed, get the housing, get them some sleep, and then they'll be better baseball players.
There's such a disparity because, you got your first and second rounders that come in, and most of these guys are great guys, right? I mean, I was like I said, I was a 69th round draft pick. I was the most ultra critical guy by the time I got, 4 or 5 years, 6 years in the minors, 6 seasons in the minor leagues. I was really salty. So I could see this first rounder. I'll never forget. Josh Beckett came in as a first rounder, and I'm like, this guy, I think he got like $7 million. I'm like, who is 18 years old worth $7 million? And I remember I walked down to the minor league bullpens and I watched his first bullpen, and I'm thinking to myself, that guy was probably worth more than that. Like it was unbelievable, right? But there's such a disparity, right? You got a guy coming in the clubhouse in a Ferrari, and you got a guy coming in, you got Livan Hernandez driving Ferraris to games. And you've got guys literally down to 12 cents and they're eating peanut butter sandwiches out of the locker room.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And unfortunately, it's still common. You drop that number that you got in Utica. That's a number that has gotten somewhat better, but not too much better. So that's something that minor league baseball has to deal with. But getting to the major league swing, You're the lieutenant governor of the state of the 2021 World Series champs. How did you see the state of Georgia get behind the Braves on this crazy run that we as baseball fans could not see coming from a million miles away?
Yeah, such an interesting journey. So the Braves have just embedded into Atlanta, into Georgia. I mean, we just have seen it. I was at the 95 game. I was, I think, a sophomore in college at Georgia Tech. So my wife and I went to that game when they won in game 6. And it's just such not a love-hate relationship, but it's just, we wanted to see them win the World Series so many years. To watch that team to come together, to watch them kind of step over the hole and just not take the bait on the All-Star game, just kind of plow ahead and win. It really comes back to just chemistry. Chemistry just wins championships in baseball. I think it's more so than any other sport, right? Like, I think, of course, I'm a little bit biased, but I think you can point to like better athletes on a team in the NBA, right? Better shooters and taller centers or whatever. Football seems to be bigger, stronger, faster. Baseball just always seems to come down to a majority of the time, like that clubhouse just had good chemistry. The front office made the right moves at the right exact moments. They didn't go get the flashiest guys. They got the folks that needed to fit, especially when you guys didn't see it coming, especially when you lose, Ozuna, Acuna and others in the rotation. It was magical.
I mean, Geoff, at one point, I think we did our recap of the Braves season. And right before the trade deadline, they had a 0.3% chance of winning the World Series.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
There is a chance. And they got Jock Peterson, then Duvall, then Soler. And it just started to roll. It was going through the timeline. It was one of the most amazing flights to a championship that I've seen in my 23 years.
Yeah, the front office, absolutely. I sent a couple of guys in the front office that I know well, sent them notes like, if they could give the front office the MVP trophy, like they should have, right? It was unbelievable to watch, and their ability to. And I think there's this huge gravitational pull towards analytics. I'm one of those that think that analytics are a resource to help, talent decisions and really understanding how you better evaluate talent. I don't think it's actually the final decision making, but I'm old school, and who knows that maybe that's a future career for me. But I think the Braves front office did such a good job of recognizing what holes they had to fill and filling them. And all those names that you put out there not only put statistical influence into those games, but they also were willing to come into the clubhouse and the dugout and on the field and make everybody better, right? Nobody was there as an individual. Everyone was there as like, this is really, winning is fun. And baseball too is such a grind, right? It's not like you play a game and get a week off. It's not like you play a game, wait 2 days, and then go play the next game. It's just day after day after day after day. And that helps you when the mojo is going well and everybody feels the winning and the encouragement and you enjoy coming to the clubhouse. But it works against you when you're losing or there's sourness, or there's this individualism playing out. You just don't want to go to work every day.
Man, I love the take on analytics. I know, Peter, you do too.
I do. Well, because I think I love hearing every different opinion about it because you can use them as a source and they're helpful, but they're not the end all be all. And you have to look at the entire picture. The eye test still matters.
Yeah.
Analytics may not favor strikeouts, but strikeouts still matter. And it's a downgrade to momentum, as you were talking about with the Braves' belief in themselves. And I just feel like a strikeout dampens that in the dugout. Right. And the Braves were a team that didn't strike out that much.
To me, analytics is like the game of blackjack, right? If you're playing blackjack, analytics tell you what to do and how to do it. You almost become a robot at the table if you just play the system.
Absolutely.
Right. And of course, if you drift and you have personalities in that, you make decisions based on, how much you got left and whatever else. But baseball is decisions around humans. Humans are not perfect and the system doesn't work like that. So you still, to me, the analytics, ultimately, we're going to get to a point in baseball where the analytics feed the best decision makers. Right? A guy like a John Sherholtz, looking back, old school Braves, and others are going to they were using analytics, but just didn't refer to it with the fancy name. They were looking at all that, but still coming to a gut decision on, do we trade this guy? Do we pay this guy more? Do we re-sign a Freddie Freeman? Do we go out and, do we rehab this guy to bring him back next year? It's still got to come down to gut decisions.
More on Freddie a little bit later on in the conversation here.
Okay.
We want to get to the lockout conversation in a moment, but Atlanta, before this run in the postseason made headlines earlier in the year. Unfortunately, because of the 2021 All-Star Game, it was moved from Truist Park to Coors Field in Denver. We both really loved your statement on the matter. I'm going to read it right now. Quote, as a baseball fan and Georgian, I'm extremely disappointed in Major League Baseball's decision to relocate the 2021 All-Star Game. I disagree with their decision to move the game to another city, and I'm convinced that not all the facts have been considered in making this decision. That said, I respect the will of the owners, players, and commissioner's office. The fallout from the post-election misinformation campaign led by former President Donald Trump continues to manifest itself and divide our nation. And now misinformation surrounding Georgia's new election reform has furthered that divide, even reaching Major League Baseball. You know, with that move from Truist Park to Coors Field, what were some of those pertinent after effects of Georgia, of Atlanta, that maybe the baseball community didn't really see right away?
Yeah, I talk a lot about this in the book that I just wrote because it was an important. I was sitting in this chair when I wrote that statement. Right, it feels like yesterday. I was genuinely just disappointed as a baseball fan when I wrote that. Right, it wasn't any sort of grandiose political statement, but I hated to see the game that I love be politicized. Right, and that's so much of what's going on. Like everything seems to be politicized. COVID. I mean, we're in a pandemic for goodness sake, and we're politicizing everybody's decisions instead of just focusing in on just that decisions. I went so far as to, I don't think I put this much detail in the book, but I went so far as to connect with a good friend. The Masters was in town, was in Augusta. I went with a good friend, rode down to Augusta National, met with a couple of the owners that were down there, tried to network to the commissioner. I actually networked to the commissioner on the ride home and tried to, just in my personal way, outside of the governor, everybody else, as a baseball fan, convince him to give us another look to keep the All-Star Game here. And it was a great, engaging conversation. One that I felt like he genuinely took my data points and considered them and put them back in front of some of the ownership group out there. Ultimately, we did not get the game back. I hated it that it was politicized. And the fallout was, once again, it just made us even further apart, not only as Democrats and Republicans, but just as Americans and baseball fans. It just pitted us in that game. And I was proud to see the World Series come back through here. And the overall reaction was, let's let baseball be baseball.
Yeah. And I can also imagine Rob Manfred probably got a lot harsher of calls from other people than you might have, because also you have the understanding of how baseball works. Can you speak to that, or do you know what Rob Manfred was kind of feeling like in that moment when you spoke to him?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to give him a hall pass for taking the game out of Atlanta, right? I think it was a bad decision, and ultimately, but as I said in the statement, it was the ownership group that he helps to represent, along with other folks in the players union and others, that ultimately came to that decision. It was painful to watch how it got there. But at the end of the day, you had a former president and a sitting president making political statements about that were 50%, they were half truths, right? I mean, you had Joe Biden and Donald Trump basically half truthing their way, using the All-Star Game as a pawn for their political positions. And that's just the wrong place. And we shouldn't let that happen in sports. Because look, it's coming to another city near you. If we do this again, some other state's going to have a political position that good, bad, or indifferent happens in their legislature, and the game gets pulled from them for something that could potentially be a half truth. Look, we're better than this, and we should. I feel like we learned, although not a lot of folks talked about the learning lesson from the time the All-Star Game was pulled to the time the World Series got here. But I think we all had a common understanding that we learned: leave politics out of baseball, football, basketball, everything else.
Yeah. We're with that. We like that. We try and stick to the game. It's much more fun.
And at the end of the day, that's the mature decision to have, just because it's just, and even in the business world, right? I mean, we're sitting here trying to point fingers at certain businesses who take certain positions that either align or don't align. Look, they're a private business or a publicly traded business. Let their customers, hold them accountable. Their employees hold them accountable. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to represent people, in political positions. Move on.
I think that's more than fair. And talking about people using those specific positions, the pandemic shortened the 2020 season from 162 to 60 games, which brought that owner-player conflict to seemingly new heights. I mean, revenues shrank from $3.66 billion in 2020, and owners claimed to have lost $3.1 billion due to the shortened season. No fans in the stadium kind of eliminated those revenues associated with tickets, parking, concessions. Therefore, owners preferred shortening the schedule to keep their payroll and other costs as low as possible, leading to those prorated salaries. And the reason I mention that is we just saw a tweet from Bob Nightingale this morning saying that the meeting that just happened earlier today on November 30th between the owners and the MLBPA only lasted 30 minutes. And you've been in some very important rooms making very important decisions. Is this much tougher to come to a deal than maybe Jack and I might think? Or do you kind of just think everyone's dragging their feet?
Well, look, it's complex, and I don't want to underplay the complexities of it. It is truly 4D chess, I'm sure. But look, it's no different than the guy who owns the restaurant right now that's trying to figure out how to hire enough people to come in, how to pay them enough, how to deal with increased inflationary costs and their inputs. I mean, every time I hear you explain, or I hear the story explain about how tough the Major League Baseball season was in 2020, well, that story times a million. Every business went through those difficult, where owners of businesses, players, or employees, whatever their story was, is a difficult time for all of us. And it continues to wreak havoc in our economies, in our communities. And so I hope that at the end of the day, baseball is a bright light for so many, right? It gives you a reason to come home after a hard day work, turn on the TV. I certainly do it. I get beat up in the media all day long. Former presidents are calling me names. People are tweeting about me. But when I come home and it's 7:05 and the first pitch is there, I got a tub of ice cream or a hamburger or something, and I'm watching the game with my kids.
What kind of ice cream?
I'm across the board. I like chocolate chip mint.
Chocolate chip. Cream. That's a good one. I'm a cookie dough guy, but
I'll go there if I have to. I just think at the end of the day, there's an added level of responsibility amongst players and owners to continue to be the heartbeat of America. If we want to be the game that we are, we want to continue to earn the legacy that's been created for us with the game of baseball. We got to sometimes rise above it. I get it. It's complicated. I don't want to act like players and owners get in the room and just kumbaya and everybody agrees how to split up their millions. At the end of the day, they're splitting up millions. They're not splitting up dollars.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully cooler minds prevail and we get the greatest game in the world back on tap for spring training. Because look, I remember what the strike looked like in '95.
Yeah.
A quick little story about that was we at Georgia and Georgia Tech rotate years playing the first kickoff game in spring training against the Braves. And it was our year, and I was the starting pitcher that year. And I'll never forget reading the newspaper that morning, all of the starters. I never heard of these guys, right? They're all like 1986 first-round draft picks. And I remember my dad telling me, he's like, you don't know who these guys are, but they're all washed up. Just throw the first pitch right down the middle. Just get ahead in the count. I don't know who the guy was. I think he was a first-round pick of the Pirates in the 80s. First pitch, I lay it right down the middle, like 88, 89, just took something off of it, and he hits a ball off the top inch of the center field wall. And I'm thinking, Dad's never been so wrong in his life. Next pitch, a guy hits a one-hopper seed. I look like a hockey goalie. I glove it, staring back, get the out. Next guy hits a seed somewhere. Inning over. I've never given up 3 harder hit balls in my life.
There's no way that might have been Barry Bonds and possibly in the
It was
80s
not
for the
Barry
Pirates.
Bonds. No, because he was on strike.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Hey, we love asking this question to, whoever joins the podcast. And, we've gone over it in depth here, but speaking of Barry Bonds, Hall of Fame ballot, Bonds, Clemens, final year on the ballot. If I handed you a ballot and it counted, are you checking off Bonds and Clemens?
I'm not. I actually talk about the steroid issue in the book, and I don't necessarily blame a lot of the guys. I mean, there was a lot of rampant steroid usage in the late 90s when I was playing, right? And these were good people. Right, I don't want to demean them or make them out to be evil. These were folks trying to put food on the table, literally pay for their house, stuff. It was a very uncomfortable time. But look, at the end of the day, those guys were using steroids in a time where they were already feeding their family, they were already putting away money they'll never spend again, and they were just trying to put numbers on the board. And it was difficult, and certainly they cost people that none of us have ever heard of careers in the big leagues because of the things that they did and the unfair practices that they used.
Do you have any idea to the percentage of players that you knew were on performance-enhancing drugs at that time?
I don't know. I'd hate to even guess. There were loopholes, right? That was the deal. There was loopholes. You hit the 40-man roster and you didn't have to get drug tested. Right. And so, you had guys in the minor leagues in AA and AAA that were on 40-man rosters, whether it was our team or other teams. And there was loopholes. And that was unfortunate. But, look, these were, like I said, great guys. I totally get it. Why some of them did. My wife and I chose not to do it. I mean, it certainly would have. I literally spent parts of 2 seasons in AAA. I was one one pitch away. I had decent numbers until everything kind of fell apart with my shoulder, but I certainly would have thrown harder. I certainly would have, maybe lasted longer in an inning at peak velocities. I certainly would have had a higher spin rate, to use a modern day term.
Absolutely.
But I didn't. I chose not to. And, at the end of the day, I'm a faith-driven guy. If I would have spent one day in the big leagues, it would have changed the trajectory of my life, right? I had to be real with myself. I was a quadruple A player, right? I was good enough to be in triple A. I probably wasn't good enough to spend a career in the big leagues and get lots of outs and make millions of dollars. So I was always going to bounce. If I would have went to the big leagues for even one day or 1 week, I would have hung around the hoop forever. I probably would have been in the front office, or I probably would have been working the waiver wire somewhere, or, coaching a team somewhere as a pitching coach. Instead, I came out, got into business, and now I'm in politics.
Yeah. Hey, we've talked about the steroids here. We've talked about performance enhancing drugs. MLB with the sticky stuff crackdown this year. This has been something that's been around forever. And as a pro pitcher, as a college pitcher, even us in high school, we did the thing where you would put pine tar on the bottom of the hat. And
I was always trying to cheat.
Has every pitcher you have ever encountered ever using something at the pro level?
So one, it was so goofy to watch them get strip searched on the foul line after
the
every
belt.
Take it off their pants.
That to your kids, what's going on here, Dad? Just completely disorienting. Yeah, certainly. I mean, guys used to put stuff in their hair on the end of the string of your glove, right? You put a little pine tar on it. Here was my problem. I'll be perfectly honest. I tried all of that a million times when I was playing catch. I could never control the ball. I never cheated in the game.
That's something that nobody talks about. Sometimes it's hard.
I literally couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if I put something on my finger. It was everything I had to just control the ball, throwing strikes with nothing on my fingers. And so, yeah, certainly guys loaded it up every which way. But it sounds like this spider tack was hybrid cheating, right? It was magic pixie dust.
Yeah. Apparently it's what construction workers will use to grip heavy and weird to handle objects, like when you're moving a couch.
Or bodybuilders holding the big bowls or something.
I couldn't imagine being set and trying to figure out where's this ball coming off my finger at? And what if I get caught, or, just me.
I'm also curious, just switching back slightly to the lockout situation, how similar do you think the lockout is to what you experience every now and again in the political arena? Because I know on a national scale, at least, we see DC go into these lockout type breaks every so often.
So it's absolutely a mirror image of it. And here's what we know, right? So most boardrooms figure this out quicker than maybe sports do and politics do, because boardrooms are so concerned about shareholders and all of that stuff. We know that the answer is somewhere in the middle, right? Yeah. It's going to be either 5% on one side or 5% on the other side. But the final solution here is going to end up being in the middle. So instead of beating your chest and pontificating and trying to gain, all this moral clout, you just lay out your cards on the table and say, okay, what can you do without? Well, these 5 things here we can negotiate on. These are my 2 absolutes, right? Go ahead and get there now to make things simpler, but maybe that's not as fun for some folks. But truly, that's exactly what happens in politics every minute of every day. It's you go to the media, you go to Twitter, you double down, triple down on your position. But the reality is you're eventually going to walk into that committee room with somebody that's on the other side of the issue with you, and you're going to negotiate out something that's less than pure on either side.
And I guess, for the lack of a better question, do you think we're going to be okay? Baseball? Do you think they're going to make it through? This just seems like it's over and over and over again.
Yeah, I do. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the greatest game in the world, right? I mean, it just gives America so much hope. It gets us through. I mean, who knows what's going on with this next variant that's out there. I hope it isn't something that we can't manage through with the normal kind of processes and procedures that it feels like we've gravitated towards across the country.
That's good to hear.
But look, a reality check has got to be in place of, this gives a lot of people hope and entertainment and fun. We're playing, everyone used to say, look, you're only making, a little bit of money. And my buddies that ended up not getting drafted out of Georgia Tech and got consulting jobs and were getting paid. I'm like, look, dude, I wake up and I get paid to throw this little white baseball every day.
Not too bad.
What better way to earn money than this? And hopefully those folks wake up too, on both sides, right? And I look at it from the owner side too. They got a hard job. They're negotiating with, really smart, really crafty, really, kind of, devilish little agents all the time. And they're trying, and their jobs, everyone's trying to get an inch. I got it. At the end of the day, I hope they get together, get in the room and say, look, let's go make this happen.
Hey, Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Geoff Duncan, just to wrap with this, do your Braves re-sign Freddie Freeman?
Yeah, they have to.
They have
right?
to.
I mean, like, I just think they have to. The market conditions are right for, he's going to get paid a ton of money, but who are they going to backfill with him? They're going to go end up trying to find 2 or 3 guys, add up the salaries, and they're going to get half the production. He's such a, I thought it was great. Swanson, and I went to the trophy deal, and he said, I'm going to probably get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but you need to re-sign Freddie, and the place goes crazy. I hope they do. He's such a good guy, too. He's such a good role model. But, one of the things I've said is, and I don't know Freddie Freeman, so this could be totally out. A lot of the times, the guys I played with that were from the West Coast, they grew up on the West Coast, they always wanted to get back and play on the West Coast. So I think we have to realize we're negotiating with being closer to home, which means a lot to a lot of players.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Geoff, because I mean, we're seeing on Twitter right now, Max Muncy tore his UCL. He might move over to second. He's probably not going to play at all. They have a lot of money, and they could be interested in Freddie Freeman. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm terrified. I think the Dodgers might get him again.
We'll keep you on our prayers. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Well, Geoff Duncan, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Most fun interview for me. I don't know if it was any good, but most fun interview I've had all year.
You were fantastic. Thank you so much, Geoff.